Hey everybody, Brian from Necronomicast here. The music you hear in the background is from Coyote Chris Sutton. He was a musician, author, storyteller, presenter, show host. Coyote Chris was well known in the paranormal community, and he lost his battle with cancer last month. He was scheduled to be a guest on this program for 2022, and unfortunately, things aren't going to work out that way. But I just wanted to dedicate the October programming of this show to the memory of Coyote Chris. He was known for bringing light to the darkest places. Rest in peace, Coyote Chris. And now, on with our October programming on the Necronomicast. From the haunted heartland in Omaha, Nebraska, my name is Brian Corey, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this special Halloween episode of the Necronomicast. My next guest for a late night conversation. Well, she was born on the bayou and raised in the Crescent City. She is the profound priestess of New Orleans voodoo culture. Her name is Bloody Mary. Now, Mary is a fearless enthusiast about her hometown and all of its history, heritage, and mysticism. And she's widely known as a Voodoo Queen, storyteller, celebrity historian, an author, a psychic medium, a ghost hunter. You name it, she's done it in Louisiana. So she's going to join us and tell us about the secrets of voodoo and of New Orleans on this episode of the Necronomicast. And now joining us from Louisiana, from New Orleans, for another late night conversation, I'm joined by Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. How you doing?
I am doing well. You should have to never do two without three. One more. Come on.
Bloody Mary.
There you go. Okay.
I'm staring into my computer monitor, not a mirror, but I'm so excited to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you. I am happy to be here to bring you in a little deeper to the history and mystery of my hometown, which, by the way, my family's rooted here for over 300 years.
Amazing.
So I have a lot of connections.
And I want to hear all about those connections. I want to hear about you and your story and about your town. I had a lot of fun in New Orleans almost 30 years ago. It was in 1994. Let me set the stage. I was dating a girl, and she was going to college in Washington, D.C. And we ended our relationship, and I already had these plane tickets or all this money spent on through a travel agency to go somewhere. And my friend was going to school studying jazz music at Loyola in New Orleans. And so he's like, Brian, just come down here. It's spring break time. Come on down. There's the Loyola Jazz Festival. You can stay for free in my dorm. So I called the travel agent, switched the plane tickets, went down to New Orleans, had a ball as most 19-year-olds do in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun. My last night there, Mark and I were like, let's go to one more bar. So we went to one more bar, started walking toward one more bar, and we got mugged in New Orleans.
Well, that's not a very haunting story, but It is, of course, stuff that happens. But on springboarding from that,
I just want to say I loved New Orleans, so I don't hold it against you or your town. It could have happened. It could have happened in my backyard.
Well, the thing is that when I'm assuming that you were drunk. So if you were drunk,
that's fair to say.
Young and drunk and a little bit not necessarily knowing where you're going, you were an easy target.
Oh, for sure. For real.
And to spring this off into where we're supposed to go, you are an easy target drunk for the living and the dead and everything in between.
Oh, I believe everything that you're saying right now.
You know, so when we are vulnerable for whatever reason it may be, whether it's because we're looking over our shoulders and looking afraid, that's an easy mark. There are entities on the other side, and I'm not using the word demons or ghosts per se, entities that can take advantage of that situation. There are bottom feeders in all races, in all dimensions. And, you know, when you're weak and drunk, you're vulnerable, you know?
Yeah, it was crazy. I had a hell of a time down there, and it was so much fun. And so you are just a champion of New Orleans, and you just know so much history, all the crazy history of New Orleans. And so I want to dive into that with you. But before we get into your hometown, let's talk a little bit about you and your life's work and your life's mission here.
Well, I am Bloody Mary. I am born and raised New Orleans girl, right? My family's been here since 1718. So, that's a lot of generations of ancestors behind me, and they knew two people and they knew two people and they knew two people. Everybody kind of, dead or alive, kind of ends up knowing you one way or another. They say that the spirits can recognize you for your bloodline. So since I'm from here, I think I've been recognized for everyone that was in your bloodline. So I think that's part of the attraction of the spirits towards me and me towards them. And they started this. I was just sleeping, minding my own business as a young child when they start knocking at the door. And I had to know why. So from a very small child, I started researching and finding out the whys before there was the internet, before it was so easy to get answers. I had to dig it up the hard way, literally and physically, and knock on doors and oral histories and collect answers and different peoples. It forced you to go out and connect to find out why. And I found out that a lot of the elders, they didn't know why they did certain things. They didn't, they had little customs and little things with spirits. But anyway, so ever since I was a child, I was very fascinated with this. And I guess they were fascinated with me because they came knocking at my door. And I had to find out more than, let's say, what the Catholic nuns thought about it.
Yeah. Now you're talking to a Catholic boy here. So I want to kind of talk about that too. How so much of voodoo, and I don't know very much about voodoo, so please correct me if I ever say anything wrong. I want to be corrected. I want to be taught something here today. But I've just known through my history of being Catholic, and like Pope John Paul was very sympathetic, or he embraced voodoo, because voodoo has
one of the popes was against and one was for. Yeah, so it depends on the pope.
Sure.
But yeah.
But I remember seeing
guilt. It was guilt.
Right. I remember
only because of guilt.
I remember John Paul embracing voodoo because of its Catholic roots. So much of it came from.
Well, actually, it's not Catholic roots by any means. It was around way longer than Catholicism was. So it doesn't have Catholic roots, but it has Catholic connections in the New World. I think it is about guilt. I mean, the fact of destroying, a culture's previous belief system by force Catholicizing slaves somewhere along the way must have had a little guilt back in his, and Christian inroads had already been in Africa before the slave trade.
Right.
As many other religions do, they come over and try to conquer another area. It includes religious conquering, right? But I think that voodoo saw a similarity, and they coveted the cool statues of the saints, which gave them a physical embodiment for their intermediary spirits, which some call the loa, which means law in French, or they call the voodoos with the little v. So you would have them saying, well, if this saint is for this area of your life, it must be very similar to our spirit, our ancestor, our hero here. And they made this interchange. White people and some Black people have a tendency to just say, oh, they had to hide what they were doing behind a veneer of Catholicism. But here in New Orleans, a lot of things were done right out in the open. There was no need to hide anything. I think that they saw the brilliance and the beauty within the different religions that were around, and of course, recognized the power of a larger, bigger, dominating religion. And they wanted the help from that, right? So they kind of ended up figuring out a way to, I don't like the word worship, serve both spirits at the same time. Okay. So voodoo has one God, intermediary spirits, ancestors, nature spirits, and all of us together. So they love the parade and costumery of the Catholic Mass. Catholics, the most important thing that people seem to neglect, the simplest and most important thing is that Catholics were never against dancing or music, and the Protestant Americans were. Mm-hmm. Since it's a musical and dance religion, gathering together is of great importance, singing, dancing, drumming. These things weren't allowed in most all of the America colonies, but we were not American. We were a Latin Catholic Creole colony, which had more freedoms for the slaves and allowed this to occur, which grew alongside of the colony side by side. So the Catholic areas that met the slave trade will have their own form of a New World voodoo that evolved after it landed wherever it did. And it's mainly, I think, a lot to do with the music. The polyrhythmic beat of the voodoo drum differed from tribe to tribe, and different tribes were sent to different areas of the New World. And there they embraced the spirit of place and grew from there. So if you want to look at it like music, think of, New Orleans jazz compared to Cuban, salsa compared to Brazilian, all these places. They had a little bit different of a beat, but a similar thought pattern. And it all came from Africa here. I know a lot of people think it came from Haiti. It didn't come from Haiti. It came from Africa.
With the West African slave trade.
Yes.
Yes.
Which went to different areas. The Yoruba trade. The Yoruba tribe went mainly to, let's say, Cuba and your Spanish-speaking brother and sister countries, the Dahomey, and later Congo tribes came to New Orleans and Haiti. So some of the same tribes went to similar places, but being that each place was unique in what its needs were and what its peoples needed, it would develop differently. And it did. And in New Orleans, it developed kind of openly. We had the only free meeting place for the slaves in all of North America. Mm-hmm. And it was the same place we ended up having the very first Jazz Fest. It had its beginnings there and acknowledges that openly at Congo Square as part of Armstrong Park. It was the first tourist spot in the South. People came to watch this wild and unusual music and these crazy dances. And then they bought at the markets, the foods that had been cooked, the talismans that were made. This is going on from the 1700s to modern day.
And it's still going on.
To modern day. Yeah. It developed openly. That makes a very big difference than having everything. Now, it developed openly, but later, after the Civil War, in the turn of the 20th century, when prejudice really got its roots in a different way here, that's when it went more to the closet. You'd think it would be the other way around in slavery, but it wasn't. Being that they, a lot of things were just out in the open and everyone dabbled in an aspect of it. And it was the most unique things about New Orleans voodoo is that it was about 80% female and it was multicultural, black and white from the very beginning. So mainly female, matriarchal, which our whole spirit of place of New Orleans is very matriarchal with the river as the mother and, all that. So that really developed into it. But of course, your show and a lot of people's knowledge about voodoo comes from Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Comes from movies or TV shows, or I just put a little blurb out on my TikTok and Instagram, by the way, time for a moment, at Bloody Mary NOLA, and New Orleans is New Orleans, Louisiana. I just put up a little voodoo doll game from 1967 where it taught you to stick pins in a doll.
Right. Right. There was a movie from the 30s. Gosh, what was it called? It was with Bela Lugosi. I Walk
with a Zombie.
White Zombie with Bela Lugosi.
I Walk with a Zombie, or I Walk with a Zombie, or White Zombie. Well, that makes sense. Basically, what was the American occupation of Haiti? Mm-hmm. They were going in and burning temples and destroying temples. In order to justify what they were doing, they had to make it more evil here.
Sure.
People growing up here prior to the Civil War didn't fear it as evil. Maybe, a few of the American Protestants were scared, but they were actually more scared of not having the help of it. So, a little bit of hypocrisy, but they would go in disguise and knock on the door. But to make it more evil, and to talk about bring the zombie into the situation, it was around the 1930s that occupation went on. And so that's when those movies and propaganda books and things came out.
And that just trickles down to feed the myths and misconceptions of voodoo.
And so do the little games that you play with. I mean, still to this day, I have to explain to people, no, dolls are not just to stick pins in. And it doesn't mean that humans don't do it.
Sure.
It means that an effigy is an innocent tool until put into the wrong hands. You can use it for healing. You can use it for love. You could use it as a guard. You could use it as a deal connector. There's so many things to use dolls for, but what we've always seen was that, the stick the pins, stick the sharps in, and oversimplification of the homeopathic or sympathetic magic. You might put a pin in the heart to affect love, in the pocket for money, in the head to remember something or to release energy and keep movement, and pin herbs upon the outside of what you need on the inside. It's a spirit tool, an effigy, or a surrogate, if you will, in some cases. But it could be an embodiment for a spirit helper. Like I got my big Marie Laveau doll right here. She's watching.
Yes.
Come on in. There you go. Come on in.
So you talked about, or you touched on, when you were growing up as a small child and you heard knocks at the doors. So somebody was inviting you to this lifestyle. Somebody was inviting you to this. What was that like growing up and having this kind of communication? Were you scared?
Thought it was
first?
Normal.
You thought it was normal?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Thought it was normal. Didn't know wasn't normal until around adolescence. Growing up Catholic, you're told a lot of stories about supernatural things.
Oh, yeah.
Stories of the saints, that they saw these visions and this happened and that happened and things moved and they had bilocation skills. You read into some of the saints, they can do a lot of things. So I just kind of thought, okay, at first, and it was mild. And, I had a helper, when I was in trouble and I was kind of cornered by a neighbor's dog and helped me get out of there. And I had visions of what seemed to be like the Virgin Mary by my bed, and a variety of other things like that, nature spirits outside, or fairies, all of those things seem pretty okay. And then all of a sudden around adolescence, they got a little more personal. There were other things that start coming that weren't always so pleasant. It's like, okay, time to do even more research, and read. And Voodoo had an answer that made sense to me, that the spirit world was good. And so did the whole spiritualist church movement. And there was a lot of compatibility between Voodoo and the spiritualist movement in the late 19th, early 20th century here in New Orleans as well. It's the whole concept of spirit contact and ancestors being part of your life and being a good thing, not an evil thing, to watch over you, to help you, and for you to help them, that it was a mutual thing. All that made sense to me. So I kept researching more and more until I, eventually became Voodoo and Voodoo priestess and teacher. I was accepted as teacher like early on, before I thought I was worthy of teaching, because I hadn't found out enough yet. But the spirit aspect in Africa, they say there's 3 types of Voodoo. There's the deity type, right? Okay. Serving the spirits, the deities. There is the talisman type, what we might call the hoodoo or the conjure here, that you're making things to help people and do things. And then there's the ancestral type. In New Orleans, it's kind of a blend between all of us. So hoodoo's the folk magic, the potions, the powders, the dolls, the charms, the gris-gris, the mojos, that kind of stuff you might see on the shelves in the back. Where Voodoo is serving the spirits, dancing, singing, feeding, cooking. Hey, New Orleans loves to cook. So we cook for the spirits and feed the dead. And I do all of those things when I do on ghost classes or ghost tours or ghost hunts. And I've been teaching this now full time for pushing 30 years, but been doing it my whole life. Amazing. And of course, I'm an author, a ghost photographer, a ghost whisperer, and a Voodoo priestess. And I've been teaching to tourists as well as to shamans and psychics and witches and all that, and even nuns sometimes.
I am so glad to have you on the show, because I knew I wanted to kind of get some education on this, and because it informs also when I start reading about the paranormal and all kinds of things, even when it comes down to things like Bigfoot or forest creatures, things like that.
We have that. The cryptids, we have all that here too. That's in the paranormal. We got the loup-garou and the rougarou, the swamp werewolf. We got the honey island swamp monster. We got the fufale. The dogman is the new name. it's really, the Rougarou or the Lugarou.
No, I've heard it. I've heard it. I've had a guest on the program. He's a paranormal guy by the name of Dark Waters, and he lives.
Yes, I know him.
Yep. He's been on the show, and so he talked to me all about Dogman and Rougarou, and
he calls it Dogman. I still on the old school, but I call it Rougarou and Lugarou, which I have met in the forest at night. And like many of these cryptid creatures, I believe them to be interdimensional. So they can slip between the worlds pretty easily. So they're there and then they're not there, and they're changeling. Spirits are changeling. I mean, they can take a visual out of your head and they can dress like that. They don't have a body anymore.
Well, yeah.
They could take something scary, or they could take something cute and innocent. They could look like they did when they were 16 or when they were dying. It just depends.
Yeah, that's why I don't like definitive statements when it comes to the paranormal, because when you see something, or if you see some kind of apparition or a spirit, or you have some kind of contact with the other side when the veil is thin, and you see an old woman, I'm just picking something out. Well,
right.
Scientifically, I don't understand how like a ghost can manifest energy, and so you see it and create light and all that. It's far more intimate and far more powerful an experience for them to kind of interact with you psychically in your brain to kind of formulate some kind of thing. So when you think you see something, that could be them projecting what they want you to see, how they want to present themselves.
You can ask for, and I have, for the real look, and that you don't want this other look. You can ask them to put their actual presence up.
How do we learn to do that?
I asked once and they said, you don't want to see it. No. And I was like, okay. I just said, this is not what you really look like, right? She's like, oh, no. And I said, would you want to show me? She's like, you don't want to see it. I was like, okay.
We talk about people wanting to change genders now because they feel more comfortable presenting themselves in a different way. Well, I guess that could happen in the spirit world too, right?
Well, I believe in past lives, so we've all been both.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Or many, or they, or whatever's appropriate to say. We've all been more than one gender, in our lives. So that's both in our souls, because Voodoo, many people believe that there's more than one soul within each of you. So within our souls, there is a male and female aspect of dominance. I think, that you just have to find the balance in everything that you do in this world, or in between worlds too. You have to be happy with who you are. To have to worry so much about that part is getting beyond the spirit growth that's needed. Mm-hmm. I believe you can also do spirit growth in the in-between time, in between lives, and in the ghostly world, that it's not done just because this body is dead. So I used to be jokingly nicknamed the necrotherapist, so because I help both the living and the dead communicate and connect with their spirit selves and what they need to grow. So if you want to call it karma, that they have to do, they could do some of that karmic work easier in the in-between time before they have to go through the entire growing up thing, right. Which causes many sidetrack problems for all of us, Yeah.
Well, you say we've had reincarnation, or, our spirit leaves this body, maybe goes into another. Why do you think we don't remember? Like, I don't remember past lives. When
you're younger, you remember them. In dreams, you might remember them. Mm-hmm. Different people remember more. Mm-hmm. My son had so much information when he was like 2 and 3, detailed information, not from TV shows that we didn't even watch yet, not from other people, because it was me and him a lot of times. Sure. He had detailed information, and we would do astral journeys and go through the dreams and go back and meet. I mean, it was a wonderful discovery process. He hardly remembers any of it, but I remember great details that he did. And I speak to tons of small children and mothers with small children who will say the same thing, even if they don't believe in this kind of stuff, which I encourage them to listen and not say, oh, you're crazy. It's not real. Shut up. That's the wrong approach with a child. Let them express it, explain, and we can learn from and with all these other creatures or species or whatever you want to call it that coexist with us. But listen to your children and pay attention to your dreams. I've run into my past life ghost a couple of times, which is interesting. It's kind of like soul retrieval, process of cleansing that you go back to everything in this particular life that you have, forgive and try to look back at it with adult eyes, put it into perspective, go back farther, and then go to your past lives, which is where past life regression comes in. I like to call it past life integration because it doesn't do any good unless it's helping you in the now, or if it's something from that past life that you didn't get through that you need to fix now.
Yeah.
You got to bring in the power and forget the pain, release, and then go on. So there's a lot of it out there, and there are ways to retrieve, some of that information. See, first of all, I see the confused look in your eye.
No. You're blowing my mind.
This is a podcast. I can see your eyes. No, we have in Voodoo, in Asian belief systems, and a variety of other things, there's at least two souls in each of you. They call it the little good angel and the big good angel. And I think there's another one too.
Two separate ones.
More than some people have. We're going to push it a little farther. There's even three, but let's go with two.
All right.
And they call it the inferior and superior soul in some of the Asian belief systems. So basically, it is the soul of personality that develops in this incarnation.
Okay.
That has the relatives, this and that. And then there's the oversoul, the God soul, the bigger soul.
That's in each and one of us.
Yeah, that knows why you were born again, that knows what your purpose is. Your whole life is to try to get in touch with that guy. Like, you want that guy in here. You want to know all the information, what your purpose is, how to achieve. So this relationship hopefully will get better as you are in each lifetime, and you can bring them together. So you, at the end, you should go back to the God soul, but there's that soul of personality that still protects and watches over your family, your house that you built, a few things, and that could be your ghost that you might bump into. The other cultures have a specific thing that, you're supposed to be with your family and responsible for them for 7 generations. Some people have a very specific belief. And in Voodoo, there's a specific belief that, the reincarnation always happens in the same bloodline. I'm not quite sure I buy that one, but I take it as a possibility. I have a hard time thinking it's only in the same bloodline. But anyway, there's different ways of looking at it. And there's bloodline memory that you can have the memory access of some of your ancestors too, as they work through you and live through you. And the ancestors not yet born who pull you forward, all of which are spirits waiting to incarnate or having, again, and then to throw a wrench in it just for more confusion for you. There's also the phantoms of the living as you're sleeping and projecting and going out into the worlds or past in time and such. There's that running around that you might bump into somebody else and somewhere. There's a lot going on.
Like astral projection? Is that what you're?
Yeah. You can, but you could also go back through dimensions of time as well as right here and now. And I've been brought on spontaneous trips to all over the grid, and fascinating in most of my experiences, I go there before I know anything about the culture. And I come back knowing more and can recognize it when I look it up that they were wrong here. They were wrong here. I retrieve knowledge.
So you earlier said that you had the opportunity to meet one of your
couple of them.
Past ghosts. How do you phrase that?
I said past life ghosts.
Past life ghosts. What do you say? You say like, "Hey girl, don't do this or don't do that," or what's
Did they say that? Did they say that to me?
Yeah, what's the conversation like between you and your past ghost?
I don't generally sit down and have like full conversations with spirits. You're shown certain things, certain chapters of your life, certain symbols, you brought certain places. I might have certain rituals that are done around or with me. I saw many, many different me's with one of the past life ghosts. she showed me like 5 different aspects of me in the now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to try to put those into balance, you know, the strong forward me and the really weird shy me, which I don't ever have too much of. And they showed me like but then they showed like my sister and me. I'm like, get her out of here, you know, and then they showed, you know, some past life. So then there was like this lawyer in there. I'm like, where did she come from? You know, very, very, you know, to the books, doing the work. And she was just showing me the different aspects and kind of helping me weave it all into one, including the aspect of her, which was the writer part, which I'd always been, but before I put my book. So that got in and helped me on that one. The lawyer one helped me doing the organized part, you know, the writer poet helped me just with the poetic part. And then the other parts of just me. So she helped me pull it together. And that particular one was in Paris. And I was wandering through a graveyard in Paris, or several of them rather. So there was that, but there was another piece that happened up in the mountains of Rennes-le-Château, where I brought in ran into something else of me up there. And then there was a totally different trip that something occurred in Italy. You know, so there was a lot of, whenever I find that's when you find, you know, way more than you should about an area. I mean, like I could understand the language and everything. Whoa, you know, I couldn't speak it, but I understood it. And I know I had a past life in Pompeii. I mean, Pompeii was just insane for me walking around. Anyway, I mean, I brought gifts from here. I thanked them. I integrated it. I gave respect to it. I forgave whatever, you know, problems I may have had from that life. And it made me stronger.
How do you know that who you're communicating with is telling the truth?
It's usually the humans that lie.
and they want to be elected to office, right?
Now that was a old thing that was taught me that I don't know if it's true 100% of the time, is that unlike humans who can say things and mean something totally different, it's not the same with spirits. Now they can trick you. Yeah, and they can do things, but when confronted with a direct question, they have to answer truthfully.
Why is that?
Because they're kind of like us inside out. Like, and when they see us, they don't see us. They might see that I have blonde hair and this and that, but they also, as I said, see me for my entire bloodline. They see me for my career choices. They see me for the things that I'm hiding, that I'm embarrassed of. They see where my pains are. They may see where my future is going before I do. That's why your spirit guides can see a bit farther and help you when you're helping other people. They can whisper what they see. They don't see everything, and there's still human choice, but this is the path that you're going on. For example, let me tell you a fun story, and I don't have a conclusion to it, but it's popping up now.
Okay.
I was in the graveyard, and I have certain things that I do with people, and one of them is a test that I try to separate them out to walk without looking, to walk and just feel, to see where they're brought, you know, and to just, if they feel tingly, to keep going. If they're tapped, you know, just let the spirit and eyes tell them that people are coming, and to show them something that's going to help them. And did this with a very large group one night. It was dark. It was quiet. And one guy comes back first, all excited. You know, he's like, it's like he goes, I walked up right to a tomb with my wife's maiden name on it. And it wasn't Smith or Jones. It was something rather obscure. And I went, cool. And he looks around, you know, and he looks at me, and he gets a little closer, and he looks around, and he looks at me, and he gets a little close. I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. He gets in. He's like, because I'm not on this trip with my wife. He's like, I'm with my girlfriend. And I said, well, you know, not to be judgmental or anything, but that's what you call a sign. And, you know, you make up your own mind and you do what you've got to do, but, you know, better be careful and make a decision soon, because this means she might go back to using her maiden name. Now, he didn't call me, and tell me if that warning was early enough in time or that he cared enough that he fixed the situation or not. But it was a perfect example of something that was about ready to happen, that had not necessarily happened yet. That little word in my ear to him might have made him really think about it and have a second chance. Or maybe they got divorced and that's what's meant to be. But spirits see you for more than just you walking through. That spirit brought him to that tune, knew he was cheating, was maybe part of her bloodline, maybe not. But, it was interesting anyway, and fun, but still, it is a good illustration of how spirits might see you.
Interesting.
Different than you see them.
When you say spirits and spirits and spirits, will we have a chance to become guide spirits like you have a guide, is it, or
it depends on you. I mean, I assume we're all spirit trapped in flesh,
right?
How much we've evolved during this physical life will probably depend on what soul group we end up with when we're on the other side. If we've evolved enough, if we're released enough without any attachments to this earth, maybe not. If we want to watch over if we are ascended masters in our field or just dedicated fathers, brothers, whatever the case may be. There's always the story about, the guy on the verge of curing some great disease. He dies, but he's an ascended master of his field. So he sticks around to whisper and push in the ears of his coworkers so that job gets done. But there's also the little guy, he just loves his family and he wants to see his great grandchildren. He just stays there to watch over them. But, he also was dedicated to his job as the night watchman. He might still go do a little walk around there once in a while. I don't think that means he's not in heaven or hell or whatever you want to call it, because I believe there's many levels of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get a day pass. The physical body is gone, so you could go back and forth all over the grid without as much problem as flying on an airplane and changing planes. You're pretty much all over.
I watch, you see it a lot on paranormal shows, and I go on paranormal investigations and things, and I always think to myself, the day comes when I am not attached to my body, I am not going to be whispering into a voice recorder. I want to,
there's a lot of practical jokers out there.
I guess, but I maybe I want to go check out dinosaurs, or maybe I want to see what's going on in the future.
I mean, but every once in a while you're just sitting there and some guy comes by with a recorder and he starts this shit. And you're like, shut up, go away, get out.
I can see myself doing that too.
But there's certain people, that are much more trickster. I had some people much where he goes, oh, I'll be a bad ghost. I'll be a really bad ghost. I won't leave anybody alone. I'll be pulling the covers, poking them all the time. He said, I'll be a bad ghost. You don't want me as a ghost. And he didn't mean evil or hurtful.
Yeah.
He just meant he's such a practical joker. He's not going to be able to stop. Which I thought was funny for him to actually think about that. Oh, I'll be such a bad ghost,
Yeah.
But most of them watch over. I believe everybody has some form of a job, whether it's just the job that you had watching over your family, or whether, what you're good at, you can help. And maybe you're not anywhere or you're everywhere for a long time. But when your daughter gets divorced and starts dating that other guy, the guy that's druggy and not good, and he's bamboozling her, you might wake up. You might wake up and get in on the situation.
Sure.
For a drastic, explanation.
Maybe it's naive of me to think, but sometimes I think like you go to this great beyond and then you have all this enlightenment, but
why?
Yeah. You mean, why
do you deserve it? Do you deserve it? Are you at that point yet? Are you ready to have that integrate through you? Mm-hmm. Are you still so much in the flesh and, you're not evolved yet to get this great beyond? You might have to come back to do the more work, or wait over here, or get in a job that you help others so that you learn, and if you, let's say, killed yourself, I have 2 suicide ghosts around me all the time. And one, I ask to, people are calling, they're going to kill themselves and this and that. I'll ask him to go explain not to to them to try to prevent them. And that would help their karma by doing that, right? By helping someone else.
The ghost's karma.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
He can help someone else not make the mistake that they did. So
how long would people carry that burden of like
depends on you, how much guilt you had at the moment you did it, why you did it. If you did it because you were dying anyway of terminal cancer and didn't want to go through all that crap, that's different than, there's different reasons. Did you do this in 6 lifetimes? Every time trouble came your way or a love relationship broke up, did you kill yourself each and every time? Have you never got beyond on how to repair that? You have to learn that. That's just an example. But yeah, there's a lot to do. So not everybody, it isn't like the great reunion. Everybody's waiting for everybody like they like to draw. Maybe you get to see them now and then, but there's different, obviously you are probably at a different spiritual growth level than your cousin in Idaho. Somebody you went to school with or somebody you worked with, I don't know. Everybody's at a different level.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah.
So what's to be made of, like you hear things like a residual haunting, which
they're both the same. They used to say a ghost.
It almost sounds like they're not intelligent. Like,
well, a ghost is, but there's a piece. There's a piece of you in there. They used to say a ghost is the residual going through the same motion over and over. And a spirit is one that still retains some of their faculties. They're good and bad. They're this and that. I think that was an older way of looking at it. I do use both names interchangeably now. However, and in my book, which you should get.
Well, I'll put a link up. I'll put a link up for people to get it.
Hauntings, Horrors, and Dancing with the Dead. It has my theory and belief systems, but pretty much we're going to say that. Oh, now I forgot what I'm saying. Here we go. Edit. We were talking about time to edit here.
Right.
Wait a minute. So we're going to have different things that people go on. And in my book, I talk about, where were we?
We're talking about
senior moment.
No. I was talking about, and we're going all over the place and I love it, but I was talking about, I had a question about residual. Are they intelligent?
Oh, residual.
Yeah.
So what I say about residual hauntings is that there is a piece of the spirit, the soul, in a residual haunting. Okay?
Yeah.
And from that piece, the spark can become a spirit. If it's stuck in a loop of not being able to get over whatever this incident was or where it is, there is a way in my necrotherapy practice to reach that person and pull them out of that. And I've had to do that recently, with a spirit, to become a spirit who was kind of like stuck in the death mode, whether they were always stuck or just stuck at that moment, because that moment that I was there happened to be the anniversary of the event and a variety of other factors. I don't know because I wasn't there before that, but I was able to pull them out of the loop, let them become more aware so that they could grow as a spirit. So the residual, if you believe in that, because some people don't even believe in that at all, saying it's all the ghost, it's all the spirit, that the residual is a piece of the spirit. And then once there's an awakening or alert or something, then it's fully functional again.
So I think you said it earlier, but we are able to grow and change as we progress through these different spirit realms.
Good or bad, though. We could go downhill, too. Yeah, unfortunately, as you know, stuff happens in someone's life and then they spiral down, right?
Sure.
We hope not, but they do.
Right. I just think as negative as things can get here in modern day times, and it's amplified. I don't know if it's even more negative now than things have been in the past. We just see more of it because we're more connected now.
Right.
Are the spirits, do they give a shit whether or not Biden is president or Trump is president? And you know what I mean? Like, do they get bogged down?
Do they still have parties on the other side? Is that what you're asking? The Republican
not necessarily
goes to
just
Democrats.
not just politics, but I mean, like, do they being dead?
Some are still extremely invested in the physical world, where others are far removed. So there's some that are still busybodies and worrying about who their daughter's dating and that she's not wearing her clothes good enough. I would say that most of them are more enlightened and grew a little. So if they're like prejudice or not liking a different religion, that hopefully they're beyond that when they're dead, but that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Depends on how stubborn the person is, how much they can let go of what they did. So we do a weekly seance all the time to talk to so many different people's spirits. So everybody's a little different on that.
Do you find most people are bound to a locale or location?
That I'm not necessarily much believing in. I've got one spirit that's kind of stuck, but most of the other ones go all over the place, come back. Sometimes they're home, sometimes they're not home. They're like us. They come and they go vacation. They might get hitchhikers. They go away for a while. I find that during most of COVID, we were spirit slow.
What does that mean?
Well, they weren't around. I mean, they feed on the energy of the world and we were all slow. So they weren't there as much. Oh. Like, for example, after Katrina, they evacuated with the families too. So we were like a void for a really long time. So they don't have to. And there's seasons, and it's not like the seasons that are regular, different triggers that might start a cycle of increased activity and other things that don't. Like when my kid moved out of the house and got married, that changed the spirit energy of the house too. Did some go with him? Maybe. When I opened my haunted museum and took half of the haunted stuff out of the house to bring it down there, that changed the dynamic of it. When my mother died, when I bought the house, even though I'd lived here for 10 years before I bought the house, signing that paper changed the dynamic. Mm-hmm. Weird things that you don't expect. Triggers, people that come in the house and look like somebody they knew or, bloodline connected. So there's an old Celtic saying that makes sense to me that I always like to quote. It's like, you can retrace the steps of your life in death. Hauntings aren't just about where you died at, but really where you lived at, where you grew up, where you went to school, favorite vacation spots, everything you do in this world is like leaving a trail of astral breadcrumbs. The more energy, the more emotion, the bigger the pile, the easier it is to go back when the flesh is gone. Then there's things that are so drastic that I cause what I call a blood print. But they can hitchhike, they can get around to where they were, they might be able to visit where they went a lot in life. And especially where their bloodline is, they're always connected. New Orleans is a huge port town. People always think of Ellis Island, but they forget about New Orleans. We were the richest and the largest port town. We were the Catholic port town, and we had the highest mortality rate in North America. People came and died. There was this huge influx, right, of people and things going on. And then there's the party aspect and the good smells of the food and the being below sea level. There's so many reasons, and ley lines, all of those things are here. So that makes it easy to travel in. And water, we're a city of underground water. There's rivers everywhere you drive and dead people. We drive over them. There's underground. 80% of New Orleans was a swamp. So there's underground bayous and rivulets and Finger Lakes and things everywhere. And above ground, we have 5 more miles of canals than Venice does.
Is that right?
Look at us that way, but we do. So we were originally called the Isle of Orleans, and pumping that down, it didn't go away. It's just all still under us, as is evident when they abandoned pumping stations during a damn hurricane. Fill back up. Yeah. We're still a swamp.
Amazing. And with the swamp come mysteries of its own, like you were talking earlier
swamp
about
monsters, swamp magic, absolutely chthonic, ancient, primordial energies. Many nasty ones were unleashed after Katrina, but that whole creative aspect of what primal energy is of a swamp, and our friend the gator. So we have the loup-garou and the rougarou, the werewolf, but he's not limited to just a wolf, as like the Gator Man or La Grande Crocodile, as we call them in Voodoo. And again, like a spirit, since they're interdimensional, they can change shapes. The shapeshifter, it can also be, another creature perhaps. And they have webbed feet. adapt to the swamps. And we got a footprint of the Honey Island swamp monster, which has been looked at by certain zoologists and cannot find a creature that matches, that print. So yes, those are the tweeny places, the liminal spots, the places that are called betwixt and between, which are the portals.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are certain areas that I covet that are these old ancient portals here that I go to, and I try to listen. And it's not like listening to me. I try to sit there and let the energy absorb into me and then follow that wisdom. Listen to once.
There's a lot of extraterrestrial sightings or things that are perceived to be extraterrestrial there as well. How does that factor into the spirit world? Is that separate from, do they have their own reality and they come here and the spirituality and everything that is around Earth? Or
I am not an alien girl. I will salute Star Tribe. You're right to believe in them. I'm sure it exists. It's just not my thing.
Sure.
I know it's grasped in there with the paranormal, and that's fine. I am more of an interdimensional person, which I believe that space travel or whatever kind of travel between the worlds or between the planets has a lot to do with getting between time and space.
Yeah, I think time travel has a lot to do with it, because when people say that they see things, they're thinking that they are seeing what is happening now, and it could be things that have happened in the past, or it could be things that are coming from another time, another dimension, that way to come visit us, not necessarily from another planet in a ship,
or from inner Earth, or just what's right there. I mean, there's so many different things that have occurred. I have met Mothman. Some people believe he was something to do with, extraterrestrial, though I'm banking for the intraterrestrial, definitely between the worlds. So there's other creatures that come to call. And there was a tear between the dimensions and the portals and everything here after Katrina.
Mm.
It was so weird.
Does that come from like just the psychic energy of everybody's despair and pain? Does that kind of tear something?
No, but that didn't help matters. But no.
Okay.
That came from what was unleashed. I mean, the great trauma of what was here. My visual at the time, how the TV movie of the airplane that a hole opens and everything gets sucked out?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So when the levees burst, this dimension, everything got sucked out on the other side, like the counter of that.
Like sucked out of their realm into ours.
Out of this realm into somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
So our guardians, our spirits, the life force, the spirit of place here was, for lack of a better description, kidnapped, like pulled out and then kind of held hostage or something. Took a while and a lot of healing and a lot of things to get it back. And things that were not normally here were here, but they weren't ghosts per se. There were some more ancient things, either from time long ago or future, that came in, and it took a long time for that repair to occur. And I was working as blindly, but as best as I could to try to get that. I've always taught to respect the ghosts and the ancestors and how important it was for us to cooperate and work together, that our ghosts are our family. They are our history, and the builders or the architects of the place are important. But there are certain people throughout time, or spirits throughout time, that have designated themselves as guardians of your home, of your city, of the waters. And all of those were sucked out. And so there was no balance between good and evil, if you want to go there, or light and dark. Even the dark side craves balance. That wasn't happening. There was no good energy to balance out. It was just flatlined and weird. And then all of the despair and problems was like our beginning conversation. We come full circle. For it's like the drunk guy that walks down the street and gets mugged, like you, except that it was the entire 90% of the town walking drunk, not just drunk, but stripped, with no energy, with no power, all in despair. They could smell the food, the bottom feeder spirits from long and far away seemed to find their way here, and people were getting attached. And it seems all I did for 3 whole years was banishings and exorcisms on people, places, and things. It was about 3 years when we kind of revived the spark of the energy of the spirit of place to begin again. After the first year, we were just starting to get a little bit of the only thing that worked, the only thing that gave us any energy at all to help us grow again was football, damn it. You'd think it'd be some lofty person. No, it's football. Winning that first Saints game at the stadium when that opened, that gave life again.
Yeah. And
then turning around 1 week after that was the Zach and Addie story. And little did I know that at that moment that I would be directly involved with that. Are you aware with my place and all that?
I want to jump on that for sure. But when you said the football thing, because at the same time, you had that experience there with the game, but people all over the world, all over the country were focused on that too.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely. And giving us energy.
Well, yeah, like me in Omaha, Nebraska. I remember when that first, man.
Oh yeah, everybody, and that was laughter and smiles for the first time since Katrina, and that was about a year later.
Yeah.
However, the thing that came through that was feeding, did not like that. Didn't like that. So within a week, Zach and Addie happened. They're considered the last 2 Katrina victims. It was a horrible murder-suicide of people that had stayed here through the storm, and they were in a small apartment. They had just moved in, barely there 2 days, had a fight. He strangled her, but then he chopped her up and cooked her. He didn't eat her, but he cooked her slowly for a couple of weeks and went mad up in there. And when it hit the papers, everybody just went lower than they had been. It was like we got a moment up with the football, and then 10 years later on the date, somehow I ended up with that place. It wasn't my intention. I'd had a small haunted museum behind the Voodoo Museum before Katrina, and then I moved into my house and around places. Something happened. A fire broke out in that building, and it was empty for about 8 months. And then I kind of got in there and got it, and had to been still working with the spirits. Addie was still kind of stuck in the death mode when I got there, and kind of letting her know what happened, and the Me Too movement, and working with her, and her side of the story came out. She is now a growing spirit. She was residual energy when I first got there, stuck and screaming in the death mode. He's still got his guilt and his karma to deal with. We're trying to deal with him to help him grow. But she was just frantic mess because people were blaming her and saying she shouldn't have pushed his buttons because he was a veteran. Well, anyway, her side of the story coming out and working female energy of the Me Too movement helped her grow. And now she is a fully functioning, growing spirit who comes and goes, and he's still got the levels to work on. But, it was amazing that it was at that time period that happened. And I knew they were going to try to make it a voodoo thing just because the voodoo spiritual temple was there. Mm-hmm. It was not anything that went on there, anything to do with voodoo, but Hollywood loves to exploit that aspect, right? And I tried to stop several TV shows from doing it. I succeeded with Paranormal Lockdown and Nick and BuzzFeed Unsolved, but there was another show that went in there that exploited it. However, they're still there, and 13 other spirits in a 200-year-old building, and we no longer have that major bottom feeder. We're balanced with the good and light and the dark, and still filled with spirits, back to being a haunted town, back to being alive after COVID. And the spirits are happy to be back on board because they feed on the visitors and the energy. We're all dependent upon each other.
And the good times.
I've been driving around the French Quarter for that time that nobody was here and saying, don't worry, they're coming back, and pouring liquor out, pretending like I'm spilling so they could get some, just trying to let them know that we all want things to be back normal again, and asking for their help. and with COVID and stuff. And so, yes, they are aware of what's going on here. They were aware of the turmoil that this country was in during the election. The turmoil, I think, is what they were, fixing on more than wanting this person or that person. It was the turmoil that we need balanced. And there's still the horrible racial unrest and problems that have to go on that we beg the spirits all the time to help with. And hopefully our ancestors will listen. And hopefully us humans will straighten our shit out.
Amen. Thank you for saying that. When we were putting this conversation together and looking at dates and everything, it took a while because you are so busy with all your things that you do in New Orleans. You have, like you said, you have a museum, a haunted museum.
A full-fledged long tour company, which I've had longer than the museum. Yeah.
Yeah. And the tour company. And you do
and a store.
And a store. You just have all these amazing things. And your website is something to behold too. Your website is?
Well, the easy way to look it up is BloodyMaryNewOrleans.com. You can go to Bloody Mary New Orleans on YouTube too, but I'm Bloody Mary Nola. That's the shortcut for New Orleans, Louisiana, NOLA.
Yep.
I'm Bloody Mary Nola on Instagram and TikTok and wherever else I am. I'm all over the place. Yeah, and I've got books and all the stuff is for sale there. And I do, I have a Paracon. I just did one level of the Paracon in April with Nick Groff. And I have part 2 that I do every year on June 23rd, which is the biggest Voodoo celebrated day of the year.
What is that?
Honoring my tradition of Marie Laveau's, of Marie Laveau Voodoo and New Orleans Voodoo. But that's St. John's Eve, June 23rd, when we rebaptize. I do river baptisms. This year it's June 20th and 21st for my Voodoo Paranormal and Swamp Magic mixture of NolaParacon.com.
Amazing. I could talk to you for, I was just looking at the timer. It's been over an hour and I was just like, oh my God.
Is it? Okay.
I'm like,
we went quick. I usually go quick with the, we can keep talking.
I could talk to you for hours. So I'll have to come down to New Orleans.
I talk a lot.
I love
Please do. Our, as I said, busy. Yes. But just March and April for spring break is the first time there was really true life back into our town.
How does that feel?
So the last 2 months I've been weird.
Yeah.
Unexpected. It's like, oh God, did I forget how to, because it was like nothing, drag, get by, try to make it work. And then all of a sudden, gotta work all day and all night. Oh, okay. Again and again, and that March and April were always our busiest months. And of course, October. And this October is going to be, it is, because they decided to move all the festivals that they wouldn't let happen at the beginning of the year and last year, all to October. So you've got French Quarter Fest and Jazz Fest and Voodoo Fest and Satchmo Fest and Essence Fest and God knows what other fest and Halloween all at the same time. It's going to be insane.
Jeez. Book your time with Bloody Mary now.
Book now. It's going to be nuts. But the spirits, I hope they're ready. We feed them. The dead are hungry. The dead are thirsty. My Voodoo Paranormal gives old school and new school. So I got rum for them. I got cigars, potions, powders. They like the things they liked in life. And I believe that you should look at the spirit world just as other people instead of as an experiment, So I do what I call Voodoo Paranormal and make it more friendly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. Because a lot of what we do, sometimes it turns into looking at gadgets and measuring things. And it's more of an experience. And that's why.
No, that's what I try to help.
Yeah.
Feel it.
From the
Develop
heart.
Your own intuition. It could save your life or someone else's. You could even save an afterlife.
Well, Mary, I have to just thank you again from the bottom of my heart for taking this time to speak to me
You're
today.
quite welcome. Do let me know when you're putting this on. I can share it on my social media and all that.
I will post it and I will share it. And thank you so much for sharing your time with me, my listeners. And when I am down in New Orleans, I will
Better give me a call.
Certainly come to see you. And I got to check out that room that I see behind you. It looks incredible. This
is my main temple room in my private home, which was also on the Ghost Adventures and BuzzFeed Unsolved, a lot of TV shows, long before I had the museum, because my house is in the Encyclopedia of America's haunted houses too. And knock on wood, one day, but not one day soon, I will probably haunt here too.
Fantastic. Bloody Mary, everybody. This was just so much fun. What an incredible episode. I love it when people say like, think outside the box or we knocked the walls down on this one. So
good. I try to do that. I've always tried to do that for 30 years with teaching other people how to connect and not fear either about ghosts or voodoo. You just open up.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the Necronomicast. There we go, kids. Bloody Mary from New Orleans, Louisiana. That was a ton of fun. I recorded that a couple months ago, actually, and I was waiting for the right time to drop it, and it just screamed Halloween to me. So, hope you enjoyed that one. Next up, a very timely episode of the Necronomicast. Episode 213 will feature the brother and sister duo of Anthony and Claire Bueno. They put together the fantastic documentary Cleaning Up the Town, Remembering Ghostbusters. So we're going to be talking about Ghostbusters from 1984, its effect on pop culture, how it affected our lives. Looking forward to Ghostbusters Afterlife, which will be coming out very soon, my friends. Well, have a great Halloween. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Go out and get those king-size, full-size candy bars. Don't soap windows or none of that shit. This episode, copyright 2021, all rights reserved. The Necronomicast, bringing you the horror of Hollywood and beyond.